Good morning, everybody, and welcome. My name is Anita Thompson. I'm a professor in the Biological Systems Engineering Department at University of Wisconsin-Madison. And I'm here today with a really wonderful group of collaborators to introduce the Soil for Society Network to you. So this session is going to be a little bit different than some of the others that you've been to yesterday and on Monday. We're going to go through a brief introduction of the network, and then we have a series of questions that we're going to introduce and open up for some discussion with you, because we're really most interested today in getting your feedback and input on the co-design for this network. And most importantly, we are hoping that you will get interested enough to engage with us in the future in the co-design of this network. So thank you for being with us today. Before we get in, we do have an afternoon session, so if this is something that you're interested in and you want to continue the discussion, we encourage you to grab your lunch and meet us in Keim Hall, room 150, across the street from the East Campus Union. So we'll be there for additional discussion from 12 to 2 today. So this is our core team for the design of this network. We're not all here today, but we represent 7 different land-grant institutions along a climate gradient from Alaska to Texas. And each one of us are doing research and education and engagement in various aspects of soil and land management. So we thought, since we have a relatively small group today, it would be nice to go around the room and have just some brief introductions for everyone. We do have time for that. So maybe we'll start on this side of the room. And if you could just tell everyone your name, your affiliation, and maybe quickly why you decided to come to this session.
Interested in soils.
Yeah.
So I'm Debu Misra. I'm from the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I am a hydrologist or a site by education. I'm a biosystems and agricultural engineer, and yes, I'm part of this elegant network. And thank you for joining us.
Gretchen Sassenrath, cropping systems geologist at K-State University, located in Parsons, Kansas, now on the main campus. And I'm on the board too. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Amadou Diallo. I'm coming from West Africa, Senegal. I'm researching the National Institute of Agricultural Research. I'm interested in soil.
Hi, my name is Shannon Hankin. I'm the project manager for this project, so that's why I'm here. And I love my team. They're wonderful.
Neil Mullen, I'm an associate executive director for the National Strategic Research Institute here at the University of Nebraska. And we're standing up a new program that for food, agriculture, and environment security within that big umbrella of what we have to work on. So that's why I'm interested in what's going on.
I'm David Jones, Department Head in Biological Systems Engineering here at the University of Nebraska, and I want to learn more about this organization, how things are put together, and the impacts that we have. Our research, teaching, and extension missions align obviously with this, and I really appreciate the opportunity to see how soil for society is a great tag to express the goals. So thank you.
My name is Bruniko Handa. I am a professor here at the University College of Architecture, and I serve the College of Architecture as Associate Dean for Research. I personally am interested in soil. I think it's very important.
My name is Kirsten Heiberger. I'm an undergraduate here at the university, and I'm very interested in soil as the answer to our water quality
Agriculture University of Maharashtra, India. So I came here over here only with the interest of mitigating the climate change with the impact of soil and water conservation measures on which we are working from the last 7 years. So, and we have a good connection and work which is going ahead with good publications as well as the impact, evaluating the impact of all these soil conservation measures for the climate change mitigation. Thank you very much.
They always start saying Namaskar ji is a common Indian way to greet. So we don't have, I mean, it is time, it doesn't require time. I mean, any time you can say Namaskar ji. So Namaskar ji to all. Milind Muzumdar from IITM, Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology. I'm working at Center for Climate Change Research at IITM. This center has two objectives. One is the modeling aspect for projections of the future projections, historical projections and future projections. And second thing is the climate observations. So of course in the modeling aspect, I have been actually trained for the modeling actually, climate modeling and projections and all this thing, but now I'm working on soil moisture observations. My main interest is here to come into to get a feel of this, how this soil moisture observations can be promoted through this societal involvement of the society. I've been working with some few NGOs, and particularly one thing is this soil moisture, either it is available at point scale measurements or at coarser resolution satellite or other modeling this process data. But the main thing is the real-time soil moisture observation on field scale. At a field scale, I mean 0.5 by 0.5 kilometer, which may be useful for applications. Of course, our main interest is the soil water dynamics. That is what we are engaged in. But how to do this soil moisture field scale observation? That is what is our interest, and I hope this may be very relevant.
My name is Ralph. I'm a graduate from the University of Copenhagen. My interest in soils is the financial asset management aspect of it, to see how a property can change economic value based upon the soil quality. That's why I'm interested in soils.
Morning, everyone. My name is Tafazwa. I'm with the International Water Management Institute, and I'm also affiliated with the University of KwaZulu-Natal in South Africa. My interest in soil, I'm into agricultural water management, so land, water, and soil issues. And then also from a nutrition perspective, agronomic biofortification. So those are my interests in soil.
Morning, everyone. My name is Maxwell Ndara. I'm from the University of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. I'm the director of the Farmer Support Group. So we work with smallholder farmers, and soil is a big issue, a big constraint in their production. So I'm interested in what to discuss here. Thank you.
My name is Deshomar Gaza. I'm a field crop physiologist by profession. The reason I am interested in this session is I'm interested in global outlook of things and function as processes. And function and process is not a one person job. So when the team is discussing about that, interested me. After the last end of last month, I was with BASF. Now I'm trying to create a node. Hi everyone, I'm Rabi Mohtar, working at Texas A&M University. I am hydrologist by profession, and I'm interested to this one.
Good morning. My name is Saleh Taglayan. I'm with the Department of Biological Systems Engineering here at the UNL. My office is just a few minutes walk from here. I'm interested in this initiative because the interrelationships of soil and ag water management, whether it's irrigation irrigation, drainage, soil salinization, all of that. Thanks.
Good morning. My name is Margaret Olorunfemi. I'm a food scientist. I work with the Animal Health and Production Department of Federal College of Agriculture, Akure, back in Nigeria. I'm a visiting scholar to the University of Missouri, and I'm here to learn the relationship between soil, water, and food security. Thank you.
Morning, everyone. I'm Gretchen, and I'm from Senegal. I'm PhD student in climate change and economics, the WASCAL program. WASCAL is a West African science, surveys on climate change and adaptive learning. It's a university handed from Dakar. And I'm here, I'm visiting scholar in the University of Missouri in the USDA program, Scientific Exchange Program. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. Yes, and I'm very interested about soil, food security, and water irrigation. Thank you.
I'm gonna be translating.
Buenos días, mi nombre es Carla Trujillo, soy gerente del Centro de Formación en Agricultura de Conservación, Tierra Saludable de Chile.
Her name is Carla Trujillo. She's from El Salvador, and she's the administrator of a training center for conservation agriculture in El Salvador that is called Tierra Saludable Ameliaria. Thank you. Buenos días, un gusto. Mi nombre es Karen Peñate. Soy investigadora en Tierra Saludable Ameliaria. Her name is Karen Peñate. She's also from El Salvador, and she's an agronomist, and she works in the training center.
Muy buenos días, mi nombre es Edwin Armando Peñate, gerente de campo de Tierra Saludable Milano, enfocado en agricultura y conservación.
This is Edwin Peñate. They're all family. And they are in charge of the Ameyali Training Center in El Salvador, and he's in charge of the field technicians and all of the aspects of the farming and for the field concerns and yeah.
Good morning, my name is Byron Casun. I'm from El Salvador, and I work in a consulting company called Ranger, and we work on collecting data from the field, especially on agriculture for conservation.
Good morning. My name is Anita. I'm originally from Brazil, and I'm a PhD student here at UNL. And my research is focused on management of cover crops and soil pathogens. And this is why I'm interested to hear more about soil.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ashdeep Singh. I'm a PhD candidate here in Department of Agronomy and Horticulture at UNL. So I'm interested in soil health and water quality. And my research is on managing nitrogen and irrigation for irrigated leaching here in Nebraska. Thank you.
Good morning, Rabi Mohtar, thanks again. I'm interested in the soil dynamics and modeling. I'm also interested in renewable energy food nexus. My hope is that soil will become the 18th Sustainable Development Goal because it's really crucial to sustainable development. Nicole and others, if you haven't, did you introduce yourself?
No.
So go ahead. Those who were not introduced or did not introduce yourself, who came in after we finished this, so.
Okay. Okay. I'm Nicole Lafour. I am the director of the USAID supported Feed the Future Innovation Lab for Small Scale Irrigation, which is a USAID funded
in the Horn of Africa in a more holistic way, but also looking at Nebraska has a huge rangeland, looking at how grazing management affects response of soil with respect to carbon and carbon dynamics.
Buenos días, me gusta. Me llamo, mi nombre is James Bloom. I'm Chief Executive Officer of Sorghum United. We're an international NGO focusing on a holistic approach to how we lift up our smallholder and conventional farmers, as well as improving health outcomes and environmental outcomes. I'm here because I'm very thankful for the 6 inches of soil that allows human civilization to exist, and I just want to get the dirt on the dirt.
Good morning, everyone. I'm a professor here at UNL. I'm an economist. I do work on food economics and policy. And recently I got interested in the ecosystem services associated with healthy soils and the design of policies that can reduce the desired behavior by producers, conservation practices to increase conservation practices to become more conservative.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Hala Obodo, and I'm part of the team from Nebraska. I am faculty here. I am a plant person, plant ecophysiologist, but I'm very interested in the soils and all the ecosystem services they may provide to nature and society.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Lucy Magulo. I'm the founder of the Help Project, which looks to build agroforests in the Philippines, and I'm really interested in how we can harness the power of soils to optimize food and land use.
Good morning. My name is Shabani Muller. I'm a PhD student at the University of Nebraska and the Department of Natural Resources. And my focus is on microbiology and One Health. And I'm interested with this topic because it's also part of One Health. But aside from that, I'm representing the Office of Global Learning Hub. So I'm here to learn from the global, from everyone, and promote this learning to our students. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Todd Kawada. My company from Japan has a water-saving soil system, so I'm very excited for today's session, and I'm excited to meet everyone here.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dale Jacobson. I'm a consulting civil engineer from Omaha, Nebraska. I'm here because Rabi and I have been friends for many years through the World Water Council. He insisted I say.
Morning. I'm Randy Carnes, a professor in the School of Natural Resources. I'm a hydrogeophysicist, so I work with different technologies to measure soil moisture, as well as do digital soil mapping, incorporating remote sensing or near surface sensing to get better soil information.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Michael Koshani. I'm a postdoc here at the School of Natural Resources at the University of Nebraska. And I'm a field worker and hydrologist. Soils are part of my daily research, and that's why I'm here.
Hello, I'm Clay Grant. I serve as the director of the West Central Research
Thank you, and I think there were a few that came in late. If you wouldn't mind introducing yourselves.
Stationed here in Nebraska, UNL. I'm here to see how soil can be manipulated to ensure food security. My area of expertise is food science.
I'm Crystal Houston. I'm the Public Relations Manager for the Upper Big Blue Natural Resources District, so I spend a lot of time communicating on conservation topics and soil health with a variety of audiences, primarily farmers.
Is there anyone else who did not have an opportunity to introduce themselves? All right, well, thank you for taking the time to do that. It's really great to see such a wide range of disciplines and sectors represented. I'm going to go through a very brief introduction to the Soil for Society Network. I think we want to take full advantage of this diverse group that we have today, so I want to get to the discussion. So I'm only going to take a few minutes to overview the Soil for Society Network. Before I do that, I want to acknowledge our big group of partners. We have, over the past 2 years, been engaging with individuals from all of the different organizations and institutions that you see there. They've been really critical and instrumental in helping us think about issues that we want to be able to address and how we want to envision what this network could be. So they've been very critical. So the funding for this project is through the National Science Foundation ExcelNet program. This is a design project. ExcelNet is accelerating research through international network-to-network collaborations. And the goal of this program is really focused on capacity building. So it aims to support strategic linkages among US research networks and international networks, aims to leverage resources to tackle grand challenges that require coordinated international efforts, and fosters high-impact science and engineering by providing the opportunities to co-identify and co-coordinate efforts that are going to address knowledge gaps and research needs. So I want to point out here that this is a design project. We are in the design phase. This network has not been implemented yet, and we're really trying to reach as many people as we can to engage with us and helping to create and think about what this network could become. The National Science Foundation defines a network in a few different ways. One is that it's formed of geographically distributed teams of researchers who cooperate within or across fields to collect and share resources, knowledge, and experiences. It has to have members from different organizations, engage at scales larger than lab-to-lab work or research questions, and could be formally or informally recognized or organized. So the figure on the left shows a conceptual vision for what we think this network could be. We recognize that this may change throughout the design process, but we've been thinking of it as a series of research hubs. Those are the blue nodes in that figure. Those could be a land-grant institution, they could be a research institution, they could be something that we haven't thought about yet. Each of those hubs are engaging with their own network, partners, organizations, and institutes to form a network. So this is intended to be a network of network and to identify those individual networks and provide a way to provide a structure and a communication mechanism to bring them together. All the while engaging with industry, future leaders, the public, policy folks, and NGOs. So we want that to be, we've It has been, and we want it to continue to be a part of the process. So our vision right now for the network is to empower communities for resilient food systems through the co-design, and I would also say the co-evolution of a global network of networks that advances land and soil management for climate adaptation and food security. So that's the current vision. Up to this point, so over the past couple years, our motivation has really been fourfold. We want to transform the management of land and soil to feed a growing population while doing other things like storing carbon and enhancing resiliency. We want to create a paradigm shift so that agriculture is viewed as a solution through improved land management and soil health. Create a diverse, inclusive, and supportive learning environment that transcends the many different stressors that are impeding global coordination to advance soil as a critical resource. And as Rabia mentioned, to really elevate the importance of soil to achieve sustainable development through policies and funding initiatives. So really elevate the status of soil. Our values that we've been working under, again, for the past 2 years, it's important to us that we are research-oriented. We call ourselves a community of soil enthusiasts, spanning different career stages, nations and cultures, disciplines, sectors of society, and we really aim to provide an inclusive space that fosters a culture of integrated thinking. A big focus is to provide or facilitate access to knowledge through transdisciplinary collaborations. We want to develop solutions that are driven by strategic scientific collaboration and resource sharing across both social and economic dimensions. And importantly, we want to credit both network collaborations and individual contributions. This is a visualization of co-authorship, so papers that have been co-authored and published in the area of the combined areas of soil, agriculture, climate, and food security. And this is an illustration that shows these different clusters. They may represent a thematic focus, they may represent a geographic focus, they may represent a focus that we haven't thought about, but I think really illustrates that there are these disconnects and that there is an opportunity to make connections among some of these existing networks. And this is just an example of publications. So, something that we've been doing over the past 2 years and that we really aim to continue to do, and an important part of this process is to engage as many different stakeholder groups as we can. So thinking about farmers and practitioners, a big focus of this network is going to be how do we effectively engage the next generation of both researchers and practitioners. Folks from the public sector, NGOs, different international organizations, underserved communities, and also private industry. So I'll just quickly overview our timeline. So again, this is a design phase project. We are designing the network right now. We secured funding in July of 2022. We hired a project manager, Shannon, she's in the back of the room, in December. The first part of this year has really been focused on recruiting members and individuals who will help us to co-design the network. In April, we held our first virtual participatory workshop, and so today is our first in-person workshop that will be kind of a repeat of what we did in April. We have a series of 3 additional workshops that are going to go through different aspects of the design of the network through June. And our near-term goal is to submit an implementation proposal in October. So that will go to, again, to the NSF. Importantly, though, we really want to think about how this network can go beyond funding cycles. So that's our immediate goal. But think about ways that we can engage and foster communication and network building and capacity building really over the long term. So we are Again, hosting a series of virtual participatory workshops to take us through the 4 phases that are shown here: discovery, planning, design, and deliver. The first one that we've already held and that we're going to be focusing on today is titled Taking Soil Out of Silos to Accelerate Change. The second is on designing activities to facilitate transdisciplinary coordination. The third is focusing on how do we engage young professionals and how do we engage underrepresented groups and designing activities for that. And then the fourth is how do we design or define the success of the network of networks. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Rabi. Maybe we can open it up for a few questions, and then we'll go into the discussion. Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, Anita. I flew from Texas on Sunday, and on Saturday, there was graduation. So the president would sit and would ask everybody to stand up, and he would state that with the power bestowed on me, I declare all of you are graduates. So I'd like to do that same exercise and say, with the power invested in me through Anita and the team, I declare all of you members of the Soul for Society. And so thank you. I would like to emphasize that this is an organic group growing from the need of lifting and raising the profile of soil. I'll give you one example. I don't have the data with me, but we did a simple exercise looking at NSF funding specifically and see how much of the funding comes into soil. In like, I think there's like 3 or 4% of the funding of a national science foundation coming into soil. The argument would be, okay, USDA is funding some, but at the really foundation of it, it's not, even USDA realized, in fact, in their recent mandate, which will be published soon, they realized that the way we have been looking at soil is a 70-year-old model of texture-based that is not gonna allow us to bridge the gap to the knowledge gap for the future. So I'll give you some kind of hints. The complexity of the soil system is not dictated and cannot be captured by texture-based classification. We really need to emphasize the science, but we already need to emphasize the soil. Soil is not dirt. We all know that. This group knows that. But we've done a lot of exercises. In fact, I was teaching a lecture a couple of weeks ago on campus at A&M. I had 300, that's the largest class I've taught, 350 students in one room. I thought, you know what? I'm not going to seize that opportunity. My lecture was not on soil, it was on water. But I thought, I have 350. In 10 minutes, I can gather a lot of information. So I asked them the question, what does soil mean to you? Those are 19, 20-year-old students. Half of them feel that soil is a nuisance. Okay, many of them were engineers. They want to get rid of soil because soil is plugging their dams and water storage. Many of them feel soil is not useful. So that's the reality of the disconnect in society, how soil is represented outside the circle of us here. So the goal of the society is not to replace any of the existing structures. We are working already with FAO. We are working already with NRCS. We're already working with the professional tri-societies and other professional societies. We're trying to connect the dots. And our long-term goal is to really raise the profile of soil that it deserves in society. And as I mentioned earlier, our long-term goal is for soil to be the 18th Sustainable Development Goal. And this is what really we're aiming for. And that's this exercise today is an, I would say, horizontal exercise where all want to co-design what this future network would look like. And your involvement is very, very critical. So we have 5 questions, and I think Shannon is going to, this is the second time I see this software. What is the name of the software? Jambo. How many of you have used Jambo? I've used it once before, so we're all novel to this. The idea is to collect information from all of you, and hopefully we'll have some time for cross-discussion. The only drawback I see in Jambo, it actually is designed that way so that individual feedback will come in as individuals, and then later on we'll have some collective feedback. So the first question is why is soil an important resource? And we're going to spend maybe, I think, maybe 5-10 minutes. Do we have 10 minutes?
Can we ask people to?
Yes. Go on your phone and scan that barcode. Yeah. Open your photos, scan that barcode, and it's going to bring you into this Jambo. And what do you need to input?
Just create a text box, right? And it shows there, and this whatever is written there is me. I was trying to say how to open it up.
So delete it. Shannon, you may want to start all over to get rid of the.
I know how to.
No, Shannon, maybe she can start all over.
Do people need instruction?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Sure.
Is anyone having a hard time accessing the Jamboard?
Are you? You know, meanwhile, we could let's do a hybrid session. For those of you who are unable to log in, feel free to raise your hand and jump in with the discussion in the room. We could do a hybrid. Yeah. So we could do a hybrid if this is not working for everyone. So if you've got an input for us. Have you opened it?
Yeah, but then I cannot do anything. So it says, as owner to be an editor for Soil for Society. So otherwise
Shannon, can you help? It shouldn't be. Oh, you're okay. You're okay. You just open. You just type in a. Open a box. No. Open a box. Open a text box. Yeah. Open a text box.
Putting down your information on the sign-up sheet and pass it around. That way we have your information and we could communicate in the future.
Don't hide other comments.
if you go to the left side, there's a square box that says sticky note, and then if you click on that, it'll open up a box and you can type in a physical post. So that's how you post.
Why don't someone would input those so that we have? I mean, we need to have a conversion. Yeah. So Dale, what does soil mean to you?
Civil engineer, it means we control erosion and rain and weather.
So it's dredging.
Doesn't have any civil engineers aren't thinking about crops.
So as a civil, fortunately or unfortunately, I'm also have a dual degree in civil engineering. So for us in civil engineering hat, it's dredging, it's costly, it's plugging the dams and infrastructure. And the pipes. What does soil mean to you?
Are you asking me the question? Well, I'm an agricultural economist, so I couldn't care less about soils unless it affects the profitability of whatever operations there is. So to me, it's all about how to profit maximize.
So it's a means to an end.
Well, if you can have good soils that has a good value of a crop, and if that soil is much better than the fertilizers we apply to the field, then yes, that might be an incentive to improve the soil quality.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask the farmer among us here, what does soil means to you?
Well, you need it to grow food. You need it to produce, sequester carbon and produce nutrients, really, to feed the planet.
Hello.
I'm interested on seed. So I think the soil is the shelter for the seed. This name of the conference is Water for Food. I think between water to food, there is two elements that are hidden. Is soil and then seed. So now we have the loop of 4 elements: water for food, seed, soil. So we have this circular. Yesterday we listened to this circular economy. So I think we can build on it.
Thank you.
For me, soil is I can say, a life-sustaining material on the surface of our earth, which the whole survival is very much depend or they exist because of this top surface soil. So for me, that soil is the life-sustaining material.
Thank you. Others? You're typing.
Yes.
Would like to get the El Salvador perspective on soil.
Ok. El suelo es importante para nuestra forma. Formando agricultores lo hemos vuelto importante porque es la forma de sobrevivir y es un mundo de biodiversidad.
For us, soil has become an important issue because we work with farmers, and farmers is a way of living in El Salvador, so soil is very important to us.
I'm going to ask a native voice to talk about soil.
I don't know what to say. Soil is critical. Soil makes the whole world go around. It's the basis of everything. It manages all the cycles of the natural environment.
What would be soil for them?
Soil is, there's the concept of land and heart. It supports us. It's a much more than just a possession. It's a part of, yeah.
Thank you. Some African perspective?
Yeah, for me, soil is the home for plants and animals, without which they cannot exist. Yes.
There was a lot of discussion about land and soil, and if anybody would like to volunteer that, to state that.
I was just going to add that the soil holds about half of the fresh water, so it has memory, and it affects the weather and climate in very intricate ways. So,
very interesting. The memory part is very interesting. Anybody would like to shed some light on land and soil, because many times we use them interchangeably. They're really not the same. Anybody would like to shed some light on land and soil? The interface. So a lot of what we model, we measure, is soil, but the interface with that we have human interface to agriculture, to a lot of the ecosystem services is the land. So there's a scale, but there's also processes that happen. So anybody would like to share? I'm going to pick on Nicole. Soil and land.
Why are you picking on me? It's what's the difference? It's a difficult one. I mean, I think when people think of land, they think more landscape. So you're thinking, by that point, you're going beyond the soils to really think about what else is in the landscape aside from the soils. So if that's water, plants, but it's also, it could be wetlands. But I, because of where I grew up, I also think of rocks, and rocks as being a really important part of the landscape. So I think that's how I see the difference between soil and land.
Thank you. So there's a scaling issue. My point is making that distinction is in the models, in the modeling, in how we represent soil. We don't make that distinction. We measure soil properties, but we assume that the scale transfer, and then there is a distinction there.
So I think someone accidentally cleared the Jamboard. So there is a way, there's a button that is pretty easy to access that will clear it. And it's a limitation of the software. So if you wouldn't mind, if you did post something up there, just quickly reposting it, and I'll take a picture of it. That would be great. Thank you.
Just right. So I think when you think about soil and landscape, soil is the media on which humans create the landscape. Whether they use it one way or the other, the landscape tells you the story of the people there, the blood and the bones and everything. So basically, the landscape is the story, the written story in a way, the artwork, but the soil is the media, and the kind of artwork you do on the soil says about you, about the society, and just the story behind that.
Thank you. Well said, beautifully said.
I would like to use an analogy. We know that soil is alive, but soil has memory. Could be 500, 1,000 years or older memory that we can read. But soil, as humans, can lose very quickly its memories if we don't take care of, and we don't understand which factors affect our memories. So that's what we need to avoid, that the soil loses its memory, because it's difficult to recover.
Thank you. We'll take one, maybe two comments. We have 1 minute.
Basically, the soil is a part of a land which is on the top surface of a land. Maybe interchanging at some zone which is available, but it is a top portion of a land which we can use it for the growing of life.
Thank you. Last comment.
Well, I just want to see if I can have a follow-up question for that. You mentioned that soil has a memory. Why do we care about that memory?
Very briefly.
So when it rains in Nebraska, that affects rainfall in the Midwest in 2 or 3 weeks. So it has a direct impact on rainfall patterns and that connection to weather and also climate.
Like humans, memory serves to make decisions. In soil, if the memory is long, it could be much more useful. But if we lose that memory, then we will not be able to recover. Never. It never comes back.
So in a way, it affects behavior, soil behavior. We measure soil properties, but we're really interested in the behavior. How does it behave to a certain event? And that's back to the memory. Thank you so much. Very enriching. We'll move on to the second question.
Yeah, hello. So, you have been inducted now, and so we will move forward with the second question that we have, and we'll have some discussion about it. Now, based on what I have heard so far, that soil is for some soil is an important resource, for some it's a memory, and of course, yesterday, I think, in the lunchtime, we heard from our speaker from Philippines that 40% of the soil have been degraded, right, in worldwide. Okay, I mean, well, that begs us to another question: is can we have sustainable soil management practices, and will that help us with at least sustaining the remainder of the soil, or even recovering back the soil that we have already degraded? Okay, so with that, I mean, the question you have all seen is what is limiting. I mean, first of all, why should we adopt sustainable soil management? And I was kind of writing down your thoughts that came up. So the benefits could be creation of a carbon sink, and it was in the last slide, or increase in soil organic matter content, which I think there was a comment somewhere in a tangent. Maintenance of crop production or productivity, or enhancing crop productivity. And somebody said reduction in erosion. We have erosion practices, reduction in erosion. There are many benefits. Now, I'm sorry? Oh, while we know all the benefits, do we know why we are not adopting the soil management practices? Okay, and could it be because cultural barriers? Could it be because it's cost prohibitive? Could it be that people don't want to take the risk? And I want to know your thoughts on all of these, and how can we facilitate these soil adoption of the sustainable soil management practices, okay? Now, I have heard the word sustainable quite a lot, so I know all of you are quite knowledgeable about the sustainability, okay? But we want to know how can this be facilitated so that we can adopt these practices, or what are the limitations, and that gives us the gap of what we need to do to facilitate this adoption of this sustainable soil management practices. So any thoughts? Let's start with what are the limitations according to you, and I know, yeah. Okay.
In my opinion, the soil moisture, soil temperature data is not available. That is what I feel at field scale. That is what I feel. I mean, very high resolution data is not available.
But remote sensing, with remote sensing? Okay. Okay, okay. But at the point level, we don't have those data. But then it's point data. No, that is what I okay, thank you. Any other thoughts? Okay.
Yeah, so one of the very important aspects of limiting the adaptation of sustainable soil management practices is because you need to have better weed management practices. Weed management. Weed management. A lot of the farmers, they don't want to adopt for sustainable soil management because they're scared that they're going to be increase in weed in their production.
So according to you, it's cost prohibitive. Okay, yeah. That's good.
For limiting factor for the sustainable soil management practices, major one is the long-term gestation period on return on investment. So to get the economical benefits, to realize them, the time requirement is very high. The means where we need 5 years or something to understand the actual economic benefits out of it, which is coming out of it.
Good point. Good point. So.
In my experience, at least in the Horn of Africa, part of the limitation is economics. So every part of the crop is used for some utilization for the household in place where crop livestock is integrated. So residue becomes a feed, and so you minimize that adoption of residue cover on soil. So we can't just automatically say, leave your residue when it is important for livestock feed. So.
And we had this discussion yesterday in one of the sessions also, how to circulate the residue and and utilize it effectively. Yes.
I think is the labor effort, because we have to put a lot of effort in order to have a good soil and then maintain that. And then the inputs, how you access to the input. If I look at it in my area, this is why the sustainability is really difficult.
So basically, people are not willing to adapt, is what you are trying to say.
Try to build on soil that are really rich in order to sustain that, because it's a lot of effort, individual effort. So the labor is not disponible. You were saying that the immigration aspect, so on and so on. So there is no people that are available in order to do this. Manpower. So the labor.
Thank you. Thank you. Do I have to pick on people?
I was just going to say quick, sustainable soil management practices. I'm guessing that means something different to a lot of people in the room. So collectively having an understanding what is a sustainable soil management practice, and then at what level is it good, and how do we make it better? I think that's sometimes hard to define, so then we don't know exactly what we're targeting.
Thank you very much. You made a very important point that it means different to different cultures, different people, different organizations, nations, So that's a primary reason why we don't have a uniform sustainable soil management practice also. Thank you very much for bringing up that point.
I just want to say that from what I've observed from the, grower conferences that I've been to, the small grower conferences, a lot of it is the mindset, the yield versus per acre profitability mindset, and that kind of fear of making that change, and the knowledge on how to do it. That was another big complaint that I've heard them say, is that they just don't know how to start making that change. And so the education and the whole mindset behind it.
Thank you. Now you just slid into how we can facilitate. Okay, so how can we facilitate? And the number one point here is that farmer training is very important, okay? Now, do farmers need training? Okay, that's the important question. We have a group of agriculturists here, and yes, thank you. And we have the translator.
Thank you. Gracias. Creo que volver estas prácticas propias para cada uno de los agricultores empieza con la educación.
I believe that for adopting these practices, it all goes down to education.
Y no estoy hablando de educación a edad avanzada, estoy hablando de educación desde que eres niño y hacer conciencia de la necesidad que tenemos nosotros de cuidar el suelo, porque si no cuidamos el suelo, sabemos que no vamos a tener alimentación.
And I'm not saying that education for adults, she's saying with kids. Start with kids, and because if they don't know, if they don't appreciate the soil, it's going to be a problem because it's a food security issue. So,
thank you very much. Very important points, how to facilitate adoption of sustainable soil management practices. Any other comments? So education, extension, you want to comment?
Debu, I'm going to jump in for 1 second. If anyone's having any issues with the Jamboard and getting to the right page, if you go to the very top, you can change to slide 2. Let me know if you need help with that.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you. Oh, 1 more minute? Okay. Any last comments? Okay, thank you.
In my opinion, I think that there is sometimes a breakdown of communication, and farmers are not told the right way to do. and also politics. You know, politicians will say, no, why do you want to disturb our farmers? Leave them alone. The way they were doing the things, you know, why do you disturb? So there is a lack of communication and also politics, you know, that's what I can think.
Wonderful points. Policy, lack of communication, mental block, education, extension. I mean, there are a lot of things that probably we could enhance in order to get more sustainable land management practices, okay? So it's not about engineering, not about science, it's more about, you know, integration of many factors, and that will lead us to our third question, which is Bassel Daher.
Thank you, Debu, and thank you everyone for this very engaging discussion. And so far we've covered why soil is important to us, and we've heard about a lot of the challenges that are limiting the adoption for sustainable soil management, and we heard about policies, cost uncertainty, economics, lack of awareness, etc. Now the question we'd like to brainstorm with you is, what could our ExcelNet network of networks, this Soil for Society network of networks, do about this? How could we accelerate change to address some of these barriers and limitations that we've just identified? And what role could this network of networks play also in offering partners, or what can we offer partners as part of this network? I mean, being newcomers to this network, what would you, as we're envisioning and co-creating this network of networks, what do you think would bring value to you as a potential partner who's going to join us on this journey? So it's a two-part question. Let's maybe first discuss what are some of the thoughts, ideas that you'd like us to work on and start considering to accelerate change toward addressing some of the limitations that have been identified. And then we could talk about what can we bring to our partners. Yep.
I think one of the entry points is linking with other sectors. So for example, nutrition and health. There is some concern, and it's definitely growing, that the health of soil is affecting the nutrients of our food. And with some momentum gaining around nutrition and health, one of the entry points would be to link the work on soils to issues that are topical and are urgent to people, such as health and nutrition.
Thank you very much. Do you feel the framing of One Health helps in that, as part of that approach? Yeah. Any other thoughts? Yes.
Following that, I was just in one of the sessions, I think the first day, that they were talking about the valley fever and how that's coming up, and had cases already in Nebraska that the soil is now having the fungi that could be found just in New Mexico. So what are the techniques or the type of management that we need to adjust to decrease that, or that's going to be increasing with climate change? So what are the parts of the society that should be in this conversation?
Could you reflect on that? Who do you think we're missing today, maybe?
I think perhaps we should bring health department, right? And the conversation on One Health. When people start seeing children get sick, I think is when the society perhaps will change behavior and how they see soil. That's something very typical that happens in developing countries, where in rain season you need to be very careful in how you are keeping water for mosquitoes not to be replicating and then having diseases, which we don't see here very often. So how those changes in behavior will happen, we are going to wait for kids to start getting sick, so maybe bringing health department and start communicating and training elementary schools, or talking to children that they can take home why some of the behaviors need to be changed.
Very insightful, thank you. Other comments? Yes.
Here in Nebraska, for sure, a lot of our farmers feel like their hands are tied due to policy. Crop insurance, crop subsidies are extremely strict. You have dates where you have to plant. You can't plant a crop that you haven't gotten permission for. We're a corn soy state. Corn is harvested at the frost date. And if you don't have a way to put a cover crop on prior to that, the cover crop will affect your yield and only take from the soil. But I think it's not sustainable practices, it's regenerative practices. We lose about 4 tons per acre of topsoil in America. In Nebraska, erosion is a huge problem. You cannot grow or out-fertilize a lack of topsoil. The health of the topsoil is what determines how successful your crops will be. So policymakers, America is horrible. It's all, our political system is not aimed at what's best for people, but lobbyists control it, and money and forces that have an interest in taking over agriculture. But we need to, if you increase biodiversity on the farm and in the soil, it helps with weed suppression and getting rid of pests, bringing the livestock back in for planned rotations so that you can get that. Everything's regenerative. We take from the soil, we give to the soil. So I don't want to go on too long.
So
but
what role do you think our network could play toward that?
I'm not familiar with ag policy outside of the United States, but in the United States, we either have to change the policy at the federal and state level or find funding sources to allow those farmers to try things like crop rotation, cover crops, get perennial rye into the fields without the financial risk of the farm going under.
Thank you.
You're bringing something which probably has not been discussed before, which is should the crop insurance folks should be engaged in this process?
It's the problem. I mean, for farmers, that in my research, that is the #1 thing is their hands are tied because they can't afford to take the risk. And rebuilding the soil is often a 2 or 3 season thing. It's not a one, I planted a cover crop and now everything's okay. To build soil takes time. So you have to have 2 or 3 years. There is actually when you start with cover cropping and some other techniques, you do get a small dip in yields for the first year or 2, and then it goes back up as the soil has better texture and there's aggregates in it. And we get rain events in Nebraska. So a lot of rain, and if the soil can't absorb that rain and store it, then it just washes away and takes more topsoil with it. So getting a bio cover on top, it's really important.
Another thing I gathered from your comment also is considering how much we want to play an advocacy role as part of this conversation as well.
Right, thank you. I think we're all very smart people here in this room. We do know that tillage is the #1 cause of soil erosion. So why do we do tillage? There's a reason for it. When we are continuously changing the soil dynamics, we are seeing a higher increase in soil erosion. One of the things that this network could do, I know this is controversial, form a lobby group, impose a ban on tillage equipment. Right? I'm going to say that again. Form a lobby group, impose a ban on tillage equipment.
Thank you.
Oh, I've got a mic. Thank you. So many of the issues that we're dealing with, whether it's soil health, whether it's water conservation, whether it's nutrition, in my mind, at the root of all that is a global overdependence on monocropping systems, right? And why do we have monocropping systems? We have monocropping systems because that's where farmers can find their economic value is within those crops. So if we really are serious about everything we've been talking about at this conference around human health, soil health, water conservation, it really comes down to a question of economics. And where do you fix that? Well, you fix that through consumer education and creating demand for high-value crops outside of that traditional monocropping system. So nothing wrong with corn, nothing wrong with soybeans. But when you look at the benefits, and I'm going to put my organizational hat on here for a second, but it's really not a bias. When you look at the benefits of sorghum and millets in particular in regenerating soil health, reintroducing that larger root biomass and biology into the soil, breaking that compaction layer in the soil that's common around the world, and conserving water by using only a third of it, there's no reason why we shouldn't be including that in a rotational cropping system. However, I cannot tell you how many times I've had a farmer tell me they would grow it if they had somewhere to sell it. Okay? In many parts of the world that you all live in, and this is true in the United States as well, you grow these crops, you grow sorghum and millets, but it's used in low-value markets, animal feed, or just simply as a commodity to go to China so they can make baijiu at, by the way, the lowest possible price they can purchase it because they buy so much of it. So I'm sorry, it's a longer comment, but it really goes to the core of what we're trying to achieve with Sorghum United is creating these opportunities through economic development, through entrepreneurial development, through creation of networks and direct contracting opportunities for farmers so that they can incorporate these practices without a federal subsidy or a governmental incentive, simply because it makes sense.
Thank you, Nate.
Basically, what the network can do for the accelerating the change, first part, like means learning from the experience at the global level. Like some of the good examples which are available in the other parts of the world can be a handy in getting to other places where it is not adopted one. That is what for accelerating the change network can do. Other things what the network can offer as a partner is the sharing of a knowledge at the various places, a kind of these jamboards or whatever the platform we have, where the sharing of a knowledge with a specific scientific data and all is very much possible through this network.
Thank you, and I think we have time for just one more question.
Siempre hay que trabajar en base a evidencia.
We always have to work based on evidence.
Y demostrar el impacto que tienen las prácticas en mejoras del suelo y reducción de costos.
And with evidence, we can demonstrate the reduction of the cost of our production. And
Thank you. This is very insightful. And thank you everyone for your contribution and for all the great ideas. And I see also a lot of ideas populating here on the screen. So we'll capture those at the end as well. Thank you. So I think Gretchen is next.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm Gretchen and I get this ponderous question. The bottom line is this network is, we've got this design of nodes and all that kind of stuff. Each node might be an organization, but it's going to be made up of people, of individuals. So this conference was sponsored by UNL. Well, UNL didn't do this conference, it's individuals who did this conference. So we've got to reach individuals and pull them in. And the real key about this is, we've got to, believe it or not, we may think we're very diverse in this room. We're pretty much all the same. we're upper educated, we've got a natural science focus. So we're really much more surprisingly similar than we think. And the people we want to try and reach are the ones who actually live on the land and actually do all the stuff we want to do to convert agriculture to a solution instead of a problem. And so how do we pull these people in? How do we identify these nodes? And how do we engage them, not in a typical extension presentation about this is what you should do with your land, but engage them in a discussion back and forth about how we're going to manage the limited soil we have in this world to solve the problems. And so another aspect is really, how are we going to find the folks that are stuck in the corners that don't normally have a voice? Now, as a person with last name of Sassenrath, I always came last in the room. Madeline Vatterott was really stuck at the bottom. So I'm going to start back here. How do we create an inclusive, finding everybody stuck in the corners who needs to be involved in this, and identify those nodes, get them engaged, and then have a two-way conversation? This isn't going to be a one-time event. It's going to be a process. We're going to build, we're going to continue to grow, we're going to use this network to solve problems. How do we do that?
I think you are right. Everybody in here is a homogeneous set of people. No, I don't see any difference among people here. So I think the first question is, what is the critical mass we need so that everybody is present at the table? And so defining, I think the question should be, thank you for using my note thing. What is the critical mass that can bring set of ideas that can lead to a tipping point? Unless you have that critical mass of diverse users, and especially the practitioners who are basing their livelihood on, farm. I work a lot with farmers. Farmers are really much better knowledgeable than us. We are reading somebody's writing. They are creating the writing. So I think practitioners should be at the table, and I think critical number of practitioners, critical diversity of practitioners should be at the table, and those has to be the ones who are leading where we are going to go. But, to me, this is just a very minute portion of the clientele.
Great, thank you, very good point. Another huge concept is, how do we engage folks that either, for example, don't have access to internet or are not particularly savvy in how to use a computer, how to access the internet. And I'm not talking about folks in the developing countries. I'm not talking about farmers from Southeast Kansas. They don't use the internet. It's not their thing. So how do we engage those folks that are hidden in the corners, but that are really doing all this stuff on the ground? This is a cool tool.
Thank you. I think we should bring
closer the soil water perspective or stakeholders with innovation systems perspective, understanding who are the other players, what are their interests, what are the behavioral sciences that are influencing those decisions. Unless we really understand the entire innovation system that determines adoption of soil management and soil as a critical resource, we may be just targeting a small piece which is not going to influence change. So we need to understand really that innovation system or innovation ecosystem and the different elements there to be able to define the entry points. Perhaps the entry point is not working with soil scientists only. Perhaps the entry point is in education, in policy, or in the market. And then that's where our effort should be addressed, because then the effect would be as an incentive to adopt or think of soil as a critical resource. Thank you.
Okay. Just to learn from your comment, which is kind of, we struggle with that. We would like to believe in democracy, democratic process, but you're raising a very good point. We may be reaching out to all of those who we want to benefit at the end of the day, but they're not going to induce change. So the decision-making process is not a democratic process. And I think that's a very important part that we need to
Yeah, one thing that was mentioned by Beth Ford in the very first of this conference is it's not about the message, it's about who is delivering the message. I think that is very important if we want to really create a diverse, inclusive, and supporting learning experience. The message may be same, but we need to learn who is delivering that message to those particular diverse communities we're talking about.
Really good point. One of the issues we have is we don't talk the same language.
Thank you, Gretchen. We have 2 minutes left, so I'm sorry to have to cut us off, but if you just can wrap up in 30 seconds.
So basically, as supporting to what scientists said about educating a youth or the next generation, at the same time, can we bring a glamour to the soil so that perhaps we'll have the more and more acceptance? So the glamour will be the things which will have acceptance from all these spheres of our professions. So can we bring a glamour to a soil? So that will cut across all the professions.
Sorry to kind of cut the discussion. We have one more question, and I apologize ahead of time. It may take us more than 2 minutes to finish that, but it's very important we hear from you. And before you leave, if you'd like to see the discussion comments, we will be happy to share that with you, but leave your email. There's a sign-up sheet floating around, making sure that your email is there if you'd like to receive the summary from this discussion. And yes, there is, as Anita mentioned earlier, we're going to have a lunch and greet, so grab your lunch. I think there's a boxed lunch, and there is in the program. Is it Kaim Hall? I forgot the room number.
So if you exit on the north side of the building, which would be, where are we? If you exit from that door, then you turn right, then you should be seeing Kaim Hall, take the stairs down, and room 150 is to your right. And we will be outside also guiding people.
So grab your lunch, and we'll meet there during the lunch break. So there's one last question. Have your email, so we'll send you the notes. Shannon has agreed to send you the notes from this meeting. And please, please, please register. Now you're inducted. Shannon has a card. Grab that card. It gives you the access with a QR code for access. So the last question is, how do we communicate the importance of soil to achieve sustainable development through policies and funding initiatives? In wrapping the fourth question, Gretchen talked about communication. And it's very important. And I'm not talking about language barrier. I'm talking about communication barrier. We are nerds. We are nerds. All the academic community are nerds. And we communicate through technical articles, and we communicate through science platform, and that's not necessarily reaching out to those. The gentleman here was making a very important point about policymakers. Those papers are not reaching those policymakers. Those papers that we publish for promotion and tenure are not reaching the farmers as well. So how do we develop a comprehensive communication plan? What sort of communication plan we should be looking at? And the floor is open for the next couple minutes. Please put your ideas there, engage in a discussion now. I may be picking on some of you for insights on communication. And I'd like to talk to Ron. Ron has some ideas on communication. Would you like to share some?
It's a wonderful thing. Communication is a wonderful thing. Actually, I'm sitting through various sessions the past couple of days. I've been, we are nerds here. We know a lot about soil, we know a lot about water, we know a lot about agriculture, most of us from a practical standpoint. And yet I found it rather frustrating that I was hearing the same things that I heard early in my career, and they're not taking out there in the practical world. So how do we reach people? And there's a role for social scientists in all of this too.
We have a comment from Martha.
I think this maybe touches on the previous question and the current question here. It's not only what we communicate, but how we communicate. So, as a collective group, what is our mindset on the people we serve, the practitioners, the farmers? Some of the themes that I hear, language is important. For example, the farmers have a dependency mentality. What exactly does that mean? And who defines dependence mentality? Is it us or? So I think this idea of they are positioned to co-create with us. Instead, we talk about the people we serve as dependent mentality. I think we need to get away from that and really optimize our relationship and build that trust.
Thank you. Before we break, I'd like to hear from a underrepresented group. Is that means that we're...
yeah, we have to be done.
Okay, so I'm gonna give the floor for the last comment to a youth group, because we don't reach out well enough to the youth community. So I'd like to hear from Luis.
Thanks so much for the last word. I think it's just vital to find ways to communicate science in a way that is easier for younger people. I know that I always talk about youth, but why is it important to involve youth? Right now, the average age of farmers in the Philippines is 60 years old. And it means in as little as 15 years, if we don't have youth in different, very niche practitioners, just like soil, then we could have a food security crisis. And it's really vital to do that. So that's either going through social medias, creating campaigns about soil, and communicating science in a way that's understandable.
Thank you. Thank you, Luis. Thank you all. It's been really a great, enriching discussion. Make sure you leave your email. Make sure you register. We'll be happy to send you the follow-ups to where we are in the design process. Thank you all.